All right. Welcome to the Unfazed, Unedited podcast, where we provide commentary on complicated topics in an uncomplicated format. I'm Dr. Shauna Payne Gold, and I go by she, her, hers pronouns. And Dr. Lisa, take your snow, take your ice, take all this stuff that usually never hits Maryland to this extent. Just take it on back to Colorado. Just take it on back. I was stuck in the ice of my driveway for literally 6 days. 6 days.
Wow. Wow.
So yeah, did you all get anything your way? Because we got, I think, all of it.
No, I guess New Mexico got it really bad. Like of that
Oh,
storm, it was New
wow.
Mexico because I was answering a little news quiz and I guessed
Yeah.
Louisiana because I know the South got hit and it was actually New Mexico that got the biggest.
Oh,
But we didn't get much. The mountains might have gotten stuff, but there's a huge issue here because we just haven't been
mm,
getting any snow. And so
mm.
the ski areas are comparatively to other years bare, right? Like there's no snow. So, and that has ripple effects into the spring with the runoff, right? And kind of
Yes.
water reserves and such. So,
Yes.
and I know Utah is also struggling. Like I was just talking to someone and there's a whole issue with the Great Salt Lake and it's kind of
Oh,
receding and it's like only at 35% full. And they also have
oh,
had very little snow. So it's like getting really, really, really bad.
oh gosh. Well,
So we'll
here
take it
it's
all, basically.
exactly. Yeah, it's bad. It's bad. I mean, it snowed and then it was like a little break, and then here comes 2.5 inches of snow. Like we don't know what to do with 2.5 inches of ice over the snow. And so for those that were somewhat unprepared like me, just go find your favorite baseball bat and just take out all your
Wow.
aggression. And then you might get out of your driveway. You might get out of your parking space, wherever. It's been a struggle. It's been a struggle. So that left me a
Hmm.
lot of time to watch the news. So we got stuff to talk about, Lisa.
Yeah,
Let me
yeah,
just put it
yeah.
that way.
Well, when that is not changing anytime soon, snowstorm or otherwise.
Exactly. I mean, it really did feel like a quarantine throwback. Like, you have nowhere to go, honey, but just to watch this news,
Right,
okay? You're
right.
gonna take this
Yeah.
news. So, Lisa, guide us into the word of the week.
Okay, so I'm pulling this phrase or term from a podcast that I listened to, and I hadn't heard it before, and it's called a reactionary centrist. So the intention is to describe a group of people, primarily on the left, not necessarily super progressive left, but just people who might be left leaning, who feel that to be more successful the left needs to move closer to the center, and it's in a reaction, it's a reaction to the critiques of the particularly the Democratic Party being too quote unquote radical, too left, right, like out of control. And so what happens is then these folks that believe the center is the place to be and that's where the wins will happen is they start to give more consideration to conservative, right leaning, and in some cases pretty far right perspectives or ideas, like to appear centrist, to appear balanced, while at the same time, like critiquing the left. So, this idea of the reason why we're in this situation is because the left didn't do X, Y, and Z, versus the reason why we're in this situation is because people chose to vote for the president. And the Republican Party is rolling over. And all these people on the right of the political or ideological spectrum are making choices. And they're not making choices in response to Democratic or left leaning choices. They're just independently making these choices, right? And so the reactionary centrist is someone who is trying to pull the left towards the center through giving credence to right wing positions while at the same time saying, it's really all the left's fault that we're in this situation, as though the right doesn't have any agency, right? So some examples of that would be like trying to find the good in RFK Jr.'s like Maha movement, rather than just saying, for changing the vaccine schedule is bad and it's being implemented by bad faith people who don't have the education or the experience or the knowledge or the expertise to do that.
Yeah.
Because you can't just state that as fact. You have to moderate it in some way. So that's what a reactionary centrist is. And so there's lots of that you'll see in the news media, particularly news media that has been understood to be quote unquote left leaning.
Now, now this is interesting. This is very interesting to me because when I listen to you describe it, this is my first time ever hearing of this phrase, y'all, for our listeners here. What it makes me think of is it's almost apologist in its way.
Mm,
Like
mm-hmm.
I'm almost apologizing for my left-leaning Americans, however we have a cohort here. I'm apologizing and trying to find some good or some accuracy in the right, despite still wanting to stay relatively left. Not going
Yeah.
all the way over there with y'all to the right, but I'm willing to concede from far left to maybe mid left in order to not vilify, in order to even maybe perform the willingness to collaborate or at least to find
Mm-hmm.
some modicum of, of debate or dialogue around the topic here. Uh, It feels apologetic to me. And I'm like, because I know I'm one of those people that is like, even when I talk to my extreme left friends, they think I'm extreme because of their, where they are positioned in the world and so forth. And and I'm okay with that. We're all okay with that. That's why we're still friends. But I think what's interesting is it's always in relation to, right? It's always in relation to. So a left-leaning person in relation to other left-leaning people, a
Mm-hmm.
right-leaning person in relation to other right-leaning people. This one is a little bit different because it's saying I'm willing to somewhat break rank from my left-leaning folks in order to give consideration, even if that consideration bolsters falsehoods,
Right.
bolsters, inaccuracies, bolsters things that we literally cannot back up in its opinion rather than fact. It's, oh, well, let me consider it just so that I can say I went through consideration.
Yeah, and you don't see it
That's
so much.
performative.
Yeah, like on the mirror side, you don't tend to see people on the right doing the same thing.
Yeah, 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 yeah,
Some
yeah.
some do, but it's more of a problem of the left, I think. And it really resonated
Which
with
makes
me,
sense.
this
Hmm.
whole idea that the left is to blame and the right is only reacting to that versus they themselves have independent agency to make choices, right? Like,
Hmm.
as though, well, I just, yeah, that piece really resonated with me. So this reaction. And you know what? I was also watching PBS NewsHour the other day, and they usually have
Hmm.
on Fridays, they have Jonathan Capehart, who is a reporter who used to be at the Washington Post and is now a commentator on
Hmm.
MSNBC or MS Now or whatever. And then they usually have David Brooks, who is like a center right New York Times editorial opinion writer. And he was not there. And they brought in this guy who I'd never heard of, but I think he has like a blog or something, and he seemed pretty far right. And you've got
Hmm.
this like serious journalist in Jonathan Capehart, and I would also say that would be true of David Brooks too. And so, like in an attempt for PBS NewsHour to shake its reputation of being left, they
Hmm.
bring in this person that it's not like an apples to apples, right? Like
No, no.
if you
Mm-mm.
wanna have a conservative viewpoint, you don't need to go to the dregs to get the conservative viewpoint. So that felt like it fit. That was before I'd read this term, reactionary centrist,
Yeah.
but I think I retroactively apply it. That's what they're trying to do.
Oh
What are you
gosh.
doing? You just
Yeah.
gave credence to this like freaking
Hmm. Hmm.
like pretty right wing dude.
Well, and okay, and so with that, I know we have to move on to other phases, but two, I'm still thinking if we're talking about reactionary centrist is usually someone from the left, and oftentimes the left is representing people that are less powerful from the beginning. And
Right,
so, what does
right.
it mean to what does it mean to give away some of your power by saying,
Mm-hmm.
oh, well, I need to at least consider? No, these are the folks that are already trying to represent the powerless, or the less powerful. Folks on the right, based on where we are currently in our socio-political context here in the United States, the right has made it clear how much, or how little they care about folks who have less power. And so they have no need to be
Right.
centrist. They have no need to back off or even
Mm-hmm.
consider any other perspective. Power bolsters power.
Mm-hmm.
Powerless or less powerful are seeking power. So it makes sense that the left would turn a bit right, whereas the right may not turn at all.
Yeah. Yeah. I
Because we
don't
see
know.
less apologies. I mean, I
Yeah.
see it all the time on social media where my left friends are constantly saying, "Hey, if you are someone who was extreme right and you've seen the evidence of the last year, and it's okay to change your mind. It's okay to say, I made a bad decision with this vote. It's okay to say I thought it was going to go this way. And it's just a staunch, I did what I did, and
Mm-hmm.
whatever, whatever collateral damage happens as a result of that. But either way, I'm not articulating my turn towards anyone.
Right. Right.
That's what power does. They don't have to think about another perspective. So is it conceding? Is it apologetic? I think from the left perspective, probably.
Yeah,
But
it's definitely an interesting piece. Well, I'll put the podcast in the show notes, so if you want to listen
yeah,
more,
yeah.
it's a long
Mhm.
podcast, but it goes into the psychology of it all.
Yeah, that's right. Yeah, absolutely. All right. Well, let me get us into phase one. All right, Lisa. So look, this is one of those moments where we're going to try to talk about something that we don't know about intentionally, because we intentionally did not buy a movie ticket to go see. I'm not going to say her name because it immediately flags our podcast and then all kinds of bots come after us. But we chose not to see the current First Lady's movie. We intentionally and consciously chose not to go see that movie. And I think what's interesting is that it was released, and on the opening weekend, it made about 7 million, which we have to think about this from a relative perspective. It may not be a lot, but it is high for a non-musical documentary, the most in a decade. But nowhere near the investment that Bezos
Mm-hmm.
put into this movie, which was over 40 million.
Yeah.
And so with that, was that a bribe? Well, I don't know what that
Hmm.
is, but the I always say follow the money, Lisa. Follow the money
Yep.
wherever the
Yep.
money is going, wherever the money is coming from. Follow the money, because that tells you where the relationships lie or the relationships want to be. So with that, it's something up with that. But anyway, the movie, based on a number of sources, it chronicles the 20 days leading up to the second inauguration in January of 2025. And I thought it was so fascinating, Lisa. I went on and, looked at what was the Rotten Tomatoes rating. I looked around. Every time I looked around for the ratings, and even as it popped up kind of in the news reel on my phone during opening weekend, the response, number one, depended primarily on what country we were talking about, right? Which was very fascinating. So, like,
Yeah. Yeah.
an Irish reviewer was like, I don't really have a good impression of her, but I also don't have a bad one. The UK struggled to sell tickets. I had a friend of mine who was in London that weekend that had opened, and I think the movie showing that she screenshot for me was, it was 8 p.m. there, or the movie was at 8 p.m. It was 7:40 because she screenshot the time, 7:40, 7:41, and there was one ticket sold in two theaters
Yeah.
based on the screenshot. I'm like, that's interesting. And what I found really interesting was that Vanity Fair
Mm-hmm.
really was, leaning towards propaganda with this, saying that it's a quote unquote serious film, but it plays like a mockumentary because they're not sure how a parody would have done anything different in the movie. I'm like, oof, that is pretty searing, actually, when you think about it.
Yeah,
Um,
yeah,
and so, with that, I'm like, Lisa, this brings up a really great conversation, which we've talked before about, um, movies or podcasts or anything that engages with folks that we may not agree with. But I think this is yet one more kind of leg on this table of trying to not build an echo chamber around ourselves where we're only hearing what we already feel, know, think,
right, right.
and in such a way that we're intentionally engaging in certain things to give everything relative balance, or at least be a circumspect, educated, aware American. And so, I had to think back. I was like, man, is there anything that I've intentionally engaged in where I knew before and probably would be after that I would not agree with them or
Mm-hmm.
agree more with them? However, I'm doing this to understand the logic and thinking of a person that ends at a different place than I do. And I couldn't think of very much, Lisa, not because I don't want to, but I just really couldn't. Like the only one that I could think of was about 5 years ago when Will Smith's book came out. And
Mm-hmm.
I decided to listen to that. And I'm like, I don't agree on some. I mean, this is his life. So it's his life.
Yeah,
But at the
yeah,
same time, some of the lessons learned from his life, I didn't agree with, but I chose to engage with that book intentionally. And my disagreement with him remained afterwards,
yeah,
right?
yeah.
But other than that, I mean, like I'll listen to a couple of podcasts or whatever, but I'm not spending money to do it either. That's another thing. So, Lisa, I'm just wondering, how should we think about this intentionality around engaging content information that we know we probably will not agree with, but we don't want to build this echo chamber around ourselves in such a way that we are slipping from reality.
Yeah, it's a really great question. And I think it does speak back to this reactionary centrist thing, unintentionally so, right? Because we are left of center thinkers and we are trying to grapple with what does it mean to give credence and time and our resources to perspectives that we ordinarily wouldn't agree with, right? So that we can be better educated. So we're doing some version of that, and I don't know the degree to which people who are similarly situated to us but on the right side of the spectrum would do that. I mean, I did try to read John Bolton's book. So right after he was arrested, I mean, I was familiar with him, but he has a book called In the Room Where It Happened. It's his memoir of his time in the Trump White House. And I didn't get super far into it. I got about 6 or 7 chapters into it, and it irritated me. But I think he was narrating it too. I listened to it. But one of the things I wish this conversation's making me wish I had persevered, because my understanding of his arc is that he went from supportive of the first administration and ended in a place where he felt that this person, the president, was a real threat to the US and to national security, and wasn't smart enough, didn't care enough, didn't have a long enough attention span. Like, he's quoted as saying something like, no, he's not a fascist because he doesn't have the intelligence or the attention span to implement it or something. I can't remember how he phrased it, but so obviously, I think following his journey would have been really interesting. And I am curious about that because I also listened to a lot of The Bulwark, which is a media outlet that was started in 2017, and it was started by folks who have been lifelong Republicans who basically turned away from the party because of their disgust with the current president. And so they're not like far right people. They're kind of in the Bush kind of traditional right of center conservatives, some neoconservatives in there. Bill Kristol, who worked in the Bush White House. I think he was the chief of staff for the vice president. So pretty conservative people. And I've started listening to them because I'm curious about how they got to where they got, right? Like, what was their journey vis-a-vis other conservatives or people on the right that haven't gotten there, right? That have chosen a different path. And I am doing that intentionally. I also listened to this Wisconsin guy who used to be on talk radio in Wisconsin. His name's Charlie Sykes, also used to be fairly conservative. And he always says at the end of his podcast, I keep doing this to remind us that we're not the crazy ones. You know? And so these people who have been historically, ideologically positioned different to me, but they see the same things that I see in how this person behaves and the policies that he implements. So, I mean, it's not, yeah. I'm not hanging out on like 4chan or 8chan to read all of these like, you know, bro groiper posts or anything, but I feel like that's a little something.
Yeah, no, I'm being very self-reflective about this because I'm like, okay, this is interesting how in response to the current First Lady's movie coming out that weekend, I see a lot of people in, dare I say it, I don't know if they're in my echo chamber or not, maybe,
right.
But a lot of folks in my circle that are waging their own small protest by saying, hey, let's all go and watch Michelle Obama's movie on Netflix, her documentary of Becoming, which is a spinoff of her book. It's not exactly, but close. Watch her documentary on Netflix in protest. And I'm thinking to myself, that's interesting too, right? Because
yeah.
I wouldn't not of course I've read everything that Michelle has written. I've read everything that Barack has written, all of that, but I wouldn't in protest, or I just didn't think in protest to one First Lady's
right
or movie to go watch another's, because keeping my few dollars in my pocket and not spending them on the current First Lady's movie, that was enough protest for me.
Yeah.
But I think it's interesting that, okay, are those folks keeping themselves in an echo chamber? But because you didn't hear nobody else go read a book about Martha Jefferson or or whoever, you know what I'm saying? Like, you know, they didn't do that. It was, I know it was contemporary, you know, First Ladies, obviously, but people didn't just go and run off and arbitrarily pick someone. My circle, who is obviously more left-leaning, more African-American, more women, naturally, went towards Michelle Obama. And I'm thinking to myself, that is very interesting. Am I in my own echo chamber? If so, I need to get out. But I think we need to at least have our spidey senses up to say, am I hearing too much or seeing too much of myself around me? Now, that doesn't mean go pick fights every day. That's not what I'm saying. But hearing someone else's perspective is important. And placing it in history is important as well. So I think I'm going to challenge myself a little bit more. That's what I'm coming up with here. Because Lisa, at least you have a list of things that you've at least attempted. I certainly have not, and not because I wasn't willing, but just because I'm like, I question everything anyway. Like, as much as I adore Barack, there were some things that he did that I don't agree with, and I was pretty vocal on those too. So, yeah, I've got some thinking to do about how I construct what voices I want to bring into my circle and which ones I'm okay not having, because all it's doing is reiterating the point.
And I think there are serious thinkers, conservative thinkers, who have well thought out, well reasoned positions. That feels very different to me than some Fox News commentator or some online person just spouting a bunch of crap
Mhm.
and lies and just opinions with no evidence, like conspiracy theories, right? And so I do,
Yeah.
and that goes back to, the word of the week with the RFK example. One of the Bulwark journalists is a guy named Jonathan Cohn, and he has followed healthcare for his whole journalist career, and he wrote a book called The 10 Years War, which was about the Affordable Care Act. And
Mm-hmm.
he just wrote a piece around how, we may have talked about this before, but the CDC, I think, now has on its website that the vaccination science community has ignored research that shows that vaccines cause harm. And in his piece, he was like, that's not true. And then there was like a second thing that he said that RFK has done or whatever, like this, these conclusions are not evidence based. And he's like, they are, right?
Right. Yeah.
And so, I think it's about navigating who do you give your time to, Shauna. If you want to be
Yes.
more well read and well versed in a diversity of perspectives about a certain issue, how do you
Mm-hmm.
cut through the propaganda? And to go back to Vanity Fair, the quote that you read where they basically said it was propaganda, the film,
Mm-hmm.
the documentary, like
Mm-hmm.
there are going to be folks who cannot discern that difference.
There you go. There you go. Yes, 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 yes. There you
Mm.
go. Absolutely. Well, look, on a somewhat connected note, a friend of mine, just a mutual friend of ours,
Mm.
Mr. Olu Burrell, he suggested to me to go back, circle back, and read the book, The Wisdom of Psychopaths.
Hmm.
And this is a book that I would never read ever in life. It's by Kevin Dutton. He's a psychologist out of he's at University of Oxford. But he's talking about how some of the things that um are characteristic of a psychopath, um, clearly relevant to where we are right
Yeah,
now,
yeah,
my
yeah, for
fellow
sure.
Americans, how to pull from them things that we can take and leave the rest. And I'm like, I don't know if I'm going to agree with this one, but look, I've downloaded it. I started listening to it while I was doing laundry. I only got through like the first 15 minutes, and I'm intrigued right now, Lisa. So we'll
Okay.
see if I agree with Kevin Dutton or not. But
Mm-hmm.
right now, it almost feels like it's too soon, and I probably should read it like 10 years after this term. But I'm going to try it. I'm going to try it, Olu. I know you're listening. I'm going to try it. All right. All right. Let's get into phase two.
Okay, so this is a similar. Well, actually, we don't. I think we've said this before. We don't always intentionally try to align all of our things, but these actually have aligned quite well because
Yes. Yes.
speaking of echo chambers and what news we're presented, we wanted to spend a little time talking about the folks who have been harmed by ICE, CBP, and other immigration efforts, but haven't received the same news. And so, obviously, we're all very aware of the murders of Renee Good and Alex Preddy in Minneapolis. However, there have been some other deaths, fatal shootings, at the hands of ICE officers, and they do not receive the same level of attention. And lo and behold, those victims are people of color. And so there were a couple of fatal shootings in 2025. Both of the men were Latinx. So one in Chicago, one in Texas, and both were fatally shot by ICE agents. So the first is Silverio Villegas Gonzalez, and the second is Isaiah Sanchez Barboza. And then the other person I wanted to bring up is someone you mentioned to me, Shauna, and this is where it was a good moment for me because I do read quite widely, like lots of different outlets, and I was
Yes.
unfamiliar with this person, and I had to go digging.
Yes.
And
Yes.
then I also asked my class if they had heard of him, and they had not, and that was like 18 students. So the person's name is Keith Porter Jr. is an African American man, 43 years old, and he was fatally shot by an off-duty ICE officer on New Year's Eve in the Los
Mhm.
Angeles area. There are conflicting accounts of his death, and there is no video, which does make it different to the Preddy and the Good killings, where there was an abundance of videos. But there's conflicting accounts. So family and friends say that Porter was shooting into the air, celebrating the new year, which is apparently a pretty normal thing to do. It's not normal for Lisa, but apparently it is a normal thing to do.
Yes.
And the officer reports responding to an active shooter, which why would you be responding to that if you're off duty? But okay. And said that Porter allegedly shot at him. Well, he says Porter shot at him, but that is obviously allegedly. But obviously Porter is no longer with us. So, and doesn't appear to be that there were any clear witnesses. And so there have been no charges filed. And the LA community is mobilizing, but it has received his murder has received next to no coverage, right? And this was before Renee Good, but Renee Good was killed on the 7th of January. Is that right? So Keith Porter was killed on December 31st, so 8 days earlier. And we didn't really hear much about it.
Yeah. Yeah.
So before I jump into my next piece, what are your thoughts on this, just to begin with?
Well, yeah. I got a lot of thoughts on this one in particular. Let me go back with context, give y'all a little bit of history. With the context, so allegedly, Keith Porter Jr. Shot a gun. There are some accounts that say that he shot a gun in the air. Remember, this incident happened on New
Mm-hmm.
Year's Eve. There's history around that. People do this all the time. Like even for New Year's, I've been living in the same home now for 3, 4 years, but then I've lived in other places as well. Before the clock strikes midnight on New Year's Eve, you will start hearing gunshots all around. In fact, in some neighborhoods, depending on where I've lived or was just spending time, there's even signage out reminding people, hey, we know you want to celebrate, but we, for example, have a veteran that lives here, so please be cognizant of how much noise
Mm-hmm.
you make, so forth and so on. It is a cultural tradition and ritual that it's supposed to ward off evil spirits and bring good luck to your household, to your family, to your neighborhood. It's something that certain people do. It's just something that certain people do. Now, let me be clear. We think about this funnel, the larger context is it's supposed to be for good luck on New Year's. If we funnel down, it depends on where you are. There are legal consequences for firing a gun on New Year's, depending on what state, what jurisdiction, so forth, and it can be considered reckless endangerment. So let me just
Okay.
state that, or just unlawful discharge of your weapon. So one of the two. And so with that, we still need to be cognizant. Now, some people let it rip, but others don't. Um, but with that being said, Lisa, I was floored because again, the one of my very close friends who's an attorney, she said, "Hey, I appreciate you posting about Renee and Alex. Make sure you look up Keith Porter Jr."
Mm-hmm.
That's how I found out about him as
Okay.
well.
Okay.
And I had to do some digging and looking around, and I'm
Mm-hmm.
a mildly cognizant person that knows what's going on the majority of the time. I got news running on my phone, news running on my laptop. I mean, any
Yeah.
screen that's near me probably has some news or something running. And so I had to look around for that. The reason why this again frustrates me is that it forces us into yet again an oppression Olympics conversation because identity directly connects with coverage. We've talked about this on our
Mm-hmm.
podcast before when we talked about, for example, when we were reflecting on Katrina, for example.
Yeah.
Two
Yeah.
photos side by side. Both of those photos, they're up to their waist in nasty water from a major life-changing hurricane. Both of them have bags, and one of them is called a looter, and another one was called something else, but they weren't called the same thing, and their race was different. The
Mm-hmm.
mere fact that this is a buried storyline gives value to whose storylines hit highest.
Yeah.
And unfortunately, it feels like if we had to go with the right now, forgive me, if we had to go with a big three of names between Renee, Alex, and Keith, we know Alex is near the top
Alex.
of the
Hmm.
leaderboard. Renee would be second. And Keith Porter, he wasn't even on the leaderboard.
Not even on the list. Yeah.
We had to go find him. I can't say that that's unintentional, especially when we have so many people in the media. And on top of that, depending on where you are, Lisa, because I am here in a very blackety black county in a very black state. And that name still didn't come up here. Like it would at least come up in the Baltimore Sun or somewhere. It didn't even come up here. And usually we are pretty cognizant of other people of color in other places around the
Hmm.
country because our spidey senses go up to be aware what's happening there can come here. It's just common sense. And so with that, I feel that it is whether it's intentional or unintentional, we know that there is a track record of this happening in this country.
Hmm.
We know it is. This is nothing new. This is not a new day. But now my question now becomes when we have so many questionable cases, we have so many situations. It always reminds me of that movie with Denzel Washington and Snow White, where we're looking forward, being cognizant and aware of what can happen because we're also simultaneously looking back to see what has actually already happened. People are frightened because the easiest way to make an entire people disappear is to make sure that their stories are erased. And
Hmm.
so the erasure of these stories is quite telling because it tells us even further, not only did they not care about that particular life, they don't want anybody to care about that particular life, and they don't want anyone to vilify those who allegedly took that life. Both and. We just want to make sure that it doesn't see the light of day. And so when I heard about Keith Porter, I went out there and looked him up and so forth. And then this is what made it interesting. People didn't know if y'all saw my social media page, y'all were participating in a social experiment because after I had posted regularly about Renee, about Alex, I simply posted about Keith. I said, Google hashtag Keith Porter Jr. And you can go underneath with the comments underneath my post. It was mostly black and brown people that were commenting, oh my God, something else happened. Boom, boom. Like there was not one person that commented
Hmm.
under that post saying that they already heard about it.
Okay. Yeah.
I have an average of between 25 and 100 people comment on most stuff that I post. And you mean to tell me not one person knew about Keith Porter? Not one?
Yeah.
Fishy. That's
Yeah.
fishy to me.
I think some of it is that there's no video that that flooded the internet, right? But then the question becomes: is that what we need now? We need video evidence to validate the murder of someone
But
because
you know
think
what? That here's the thing though. Even when we have it, it doesn't become validation. It simply becomes a discussion piece. Like it's still not even validating. It's
right. I
not
suppose
valid. I
so.
mean, that was part of the problem with our previous episode was that everyone was looking at the same video and saying that they saw something different.
Yeah. Yeah.
And so even when you have the video, now it's like, Lisa, let me tell you something. Nothing will make you more upset than watching something like Alex Preddy, and you've seen it from multiple angles, and folks that are diametrically opposed to anything that Kamala Harris stood for, anything that Biden stood for, they are just staunchly, I wouldn't even say that they're part of the red hat crew at all. They're just staunchly opposed to whatever previously was. And they are legit believe, oh, let's just pass this off as AI. Oh, that just happened. That has to be AI.
Mm, mm,
So here we go again.
yeah.
You clearly see a gentleman shot 10 times from more than one direction. And now the poo-pooing of it off is, oh, it must be AI. So even when you have the video, that still
Mm-hmm.
isn't a slam dunk with anything. Like it's just more to question.
Yeah, the rise of AI, I think, is really going to complicate this. But
Mhm.
I just here's an associated point, not about Keith Porter per se, but kind of a larger point. So one of these ex-conservative, ex-Republican podcasters that I listen
Mm.
to, talked about how both Renee Good and Alex Preddy didn't believe that they would get shot in those situations where they were protesting, right? They still believed, this was her assessment of it, they still believed that they lived in a country where federal law enforcement wouldn't shoot them for exercising their First Amendment right? Like right up until the point that they were shot. And so
Absolutely, to the bitter end. Yes, yes,
that
yes.
was the faith that they had. And it just struck me, because this person is white and obviously those two people are white. I'm like, I don't think that feeling is shared among communities of color. Like, I think a person of color absolutely believes that a federal authority would shoot them in that similar situation, right? And you
Without
know,
a damn doubt.
right.
Exactly.
Yeah, so that was really that was just
That's a great
illuminating for
point.
me, that even you know this kind of like the white experience is the universal experience, which it isn't, right? But I just want to name these other people. So there's also been 6 men who've died in detention in this year, Shauna, 2026.
Mm.
So in a month. And I'm just going to read their names. So it's Geraldo Lunas Campos, 55, he's Cuban. Victor Manuel Diaz, no age was listed, Nicaraguan. Parody La, Cambodian, 46 years old. Luis
Mm.
Beltran Yanez Cruz, 68. He'd been in the USA 20 years, but I don't know from where he came. Heber Sanchez Dominguez, 34-year-old Mexican, and Luis Gustavo Nunez Caceres, 42-year-old Honduran. And they have died while in detention. So they were arrested by ICE and detained. And then on January 22nd, the El Paso County coroner ruled
Mhm.
Geraldo Lunas Campos, his death, a murder. They ruled it a homicide. He died because of
Mhm.
asphyxia due to neck and torso compression.
Impression.
So this stuff is happening behind closed doors without a video. And again, like, I had to go hunting for these names. I'd heard about Geraldo Lunas Campos and that homicide, but I hadn't heard about any of these other people. And they're in detention in places that are arguably committing human rights abuses.
Yeah.
And we're not hearing about it, right? And these are all people of color.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm. Absolutely. Well, and so we, I know this sounds so cliche-ish, but we truly don't know what we don't know. But
Right,
at this point, given the track record, it's a situation where we're having to highlight, dig up, bring out these names that are buried, or these names, again, information that intentionally they do not want us to know about.
right, right,
It seems like it minimizes a situation that is a human rights issue. So it seems like it minimizes it, but here we go, looking for this information to make sure that these names don't just become erased,
right.
you
Yeah,
know?
I mean,
And
and
so
yeah,
I'm wondering if this, again, this makes us all pause to remember that part of propaganda, I would suggest, is erasure. Like that's
yeah,
the one of the biggest pieces is, you
yeah,
know, if we just erase the fact that this many people died, then okay, fine. Like that was one of the things that really hit me hard when I was listening to a woman that was talking about the transatlantic slave trade, that did not there was rarely, if ever, a number as to how many people left the African continent. They only wanted to talk about how many people were were brought to the continent alive. And it struck me just doing the math. It's like you had this many people that left, this many people that arrived, and so we got this many people unaccounted for.
Right. Right.
Literally jumped into the ocean or died en route or were murdered en route or what have you, or escaped by some other means. There has to be an account, but if we never mention the gap in that math, then it's
Mm-hmm.
like they never existed.
Yeah. Yeah.
And so, I'm just always very aware. Anytime I read something, I'm like, okay, what are they not telling us? And I don't
Yeah.
think that's a conspiracy theorist at all. It is we know we are getting filtered stories every single day. And I'm
Mm-hmm.
not saying unintentional because I realize not every article can cover every, dot every I and cross every T. I get that part. But we know that there is some intentional, like these names, there's some intentional information
Mm-hmm.
that is being excluded for a reason so that they disappear.
Yeah, yeah. And there were 32 people who died in detention in 2025, and that's the most in 2 decades. And
Mhm.
I couldn't tell you who those 32 people were, right? Outside of the ones, obviously, I just read you, but well, they were
Mhm.
2026, so that doesn't even include them. So that's now 38
Yeah.
in a year and a
Hmm.
month. Um, and we're not hearing about it. And, we began this conversation thinking about Keith Porter Jr., but it's so much bigger than that. And we have to
Yeah.
question are people just now paying attention to ICE and its brutality because two white people were killed?
Hmm. That's right. That's right. Well, I will say too, you know me, Lisa, I always like to give people something to do at the end of
Mm,
these conversations rather than just leaving it at the period. Um, Talk to, connect with, continue to network with people who live or have some direct connection to these places and spaces.
mm-hmm.
I think that is so crucial to making sure that important pieces of these stories don't get erased, left out,
Yeah,
excluded.
yeah.
I had a great conversation because I was coordinating an event with a friend of mine who is a UCC, United Church of Christ minister in Minneapolis, who has been doing activist work in Minneapolis. And the stories that she has shared with me, I have not and probably will never see in the news. One example, real quick example, is of course, given the situation, there are memorials all over, definitely at the site of the
Mm-hmm.
murders, but also just in general everywhere. And so one of them, especially after George Floyd, but one of them was a monument, like a wall, where yes, Alex Preddy, there's a spot, for him somewhere else. There's a spot for Renee Good somewhere else, but this happens to be a wall that has the names of all the people of color that have died due to fatal shootings, um, due to the situation in Minneapolis currently, but also more broadly in other
Mm-hmm.
cities. Black and brown people's names specifically.
Yeah.
But then she shares with me, how are we as Black people and as a Black woman minister, activist, how am I supposed to feel when a white woman goes up and staples a picture of Renee Good over top of this wooden
Hmm.
wall that's been painted for a different purpose?
Yeah.
Well, you don't want to look like the asshole that goes up there and rips down Renee
Right.
Good's picture because, of course, we care about her. Of course, we care about her family. And at the same time, this is not the place and space for it because we have other places and spaces for
Yeah.
it.
Yeah.
Same
Yeah.
thing if I, went to, another memorial of another identity and I decided, okay, now I want to make it all Black. No, that's not my place in space. There's enough place and space for all of us, but at what point do we end up creating conflict where it's blossoming out of all of our grief, which
Yeah.
then becomes another layer of grief,
Yeah.
you know? So, with that, continue to talk, connect, share, just listen, definitely listen, don't talk too much.
Mm-hmm.
Listen to their stories because I guarantee you, you're going to hear some stuff that you will never read.
Right.
And
Right.
those are the stories. Those are the
Yeah.
ones.
Yeah.
Those are the ones. So all right. Well, with that, hopefully we gave y'all another good one, something to chew on in regards
Hmm.
to all of this. But hopefully you'll do your homework in regard to listening to more of the stories that may never hit the news for any of us. But with that, please reach out to us on all of our social media platforms. Definitely your favorite podcast app has us there at Unfazed Unedited. Email us at info@unfazedpodcast.com or just visit our website where everything lives, unfazedpodcast.com. If you like this week's episode, like, subscribe, leave a review, share with your friends, coworkers, or others in this phase of your life. So until next week.
All right. See you next week.